Dr. Mindy here, and on this video, you all have been asking me what's the difference between keto and low carb, and there appears to be some confusion. So on this video, I'm gonna break it down. I'm gonna show you the pros and cons of both a ketogenic diet and a low carb diet, and then I'm gonna show you how you can start to put this information into action immediately so that you can achieve any health goal that you are dreaming of. And by the way, if you are new to my channel, I just have to say welcome, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Super happy you're here.
Pioneer in the fasting
Do a long fast one day, your blood sugar going up and down.
We're in it together.
Okay, I'm gonna dive right into it today. So there's a big misconception out there in the world on what the ketogenic diet truly is and why you would even need to get ketones. And beyond that statement, there's a lot of confusion when people say, I'm going low carb. What does that actually mean? So here we go. I'm gonna start with the low carb diet. And the way that I look at low carb is that there are four things that people do when they go low carb. First is they start to cut out all the processed carbs. Yay, this is fabulous. These are your breads, your cakes, your cookies, all your pastas. When somebody decides to go low carb, they're like, okay, I'm gonna cut the carbs out, but they think of those refined carbs. That's fabulous, and there's nothing wrong with that. The second thing that they do is that because they're craving carbs is they tend to lean more into what I call nature's carbs. This is also really awesome. Nature's carbs are your fruits and your potatoes and your squashes and your beans and your rice. We love nature's carbs. So there's nothing wrong with those first two steps in a low carb diet. The third thing I want to say for you macro fans out there is that a low carb diet traditionally tends to vacillate between 50 and 150 grams of carbohydrates a day. Now, if you've been following me for some time, that's a little bit on the high side to really drop weight, and I'm going to talk about this when I come to the cons of a low carb diet. But I also want to point out that the fourth thing that happens when people go low carb is they pull all these refined carbohydrates out, and what they do is as they lean into nature's carbs, they might lean into fruit, so they increase that. They also lean into protein, and they start to bring protein up to almost too high of a level. And it's that protein piece that can start to affect weight loss. So this is really key for those of you who are resonating with what I'm saying right now. I'm not opposed to a low carb diet, but if you're trying to lose weight or you're stuck with your low carb diet, I want you to be aware of two things. One is you may be leaning into too many nature's carbs. You might be doing too much fruit. But more importantly, you may be doing too much protein, and that might be affecting your weight loss results. So stick with me here. The pros of going low carb, the way I just explained it, is you don't have to count macros. Hallelujah. I mean, come on now, it gets exhausting counting macros, right? So some people just say, I'm gonna take the refined carbohydrates out of my diet. That's awesome. Okay. The other pro of going low carb is when you take those refined macros out, you start to see changes in your fasting glucose, you see changes in your fasting insulin, you start to see all the metabolic markers change. So often you'll see reduction in cholesterol, total cholesterol, LDLs, HDLs go up. Yay, we love that. It's a huge benefit. The third pro that you see with a low carb diet is you start to see that your 2-3 o'clock energy dip in the afternoon goes away. Okay, well, why is that? That happens because those refined carbohydrates have you on this crazy up and down. So when you pull those out, nature's carbs, because of the fiber in them, they tend to keep your blood sugar more even. Yay, we love that. The other pro that we like with a low carb diet is you also will notice better mental clarity because all those refined carbohydrates tend to cause inflammation in your brain, and that inflammation will come down. Now here's, as great as all this sounds, why would you ever not do low carb? And there's two reasons. One is we find that with a low-carb diet, a lot of people don't get the total weight loss result they're looking for. And that's where the ketogenic diet can really help you accelerate weight loss. The other thing that we know about low-carb diet is that you might keep you stuck over here in sugar burner, where you're not able to flip over into your fat burning mode as quickly. We also know that you could still be really hungry. If you aren't making ketones, the low-carb diet doesn't mean you're gonna start making ketones. So you might be more hungry, and over time, it can be really hard to stick with. And the last one is it can be difficult for your hormonal health. So we love low-carb, but it's not your go-to all the time. Okay, now stick with me here. Why would you want to go keto? When you go keto, you're really going low carb. So this is where you're keeping your macros under 50 grams. So you're under 50 net carbs. That's great for weight loss. When you bring your macros down, you do have to count macros a little more with the ketogenic diet, but when you bring it under 50 grams, now what happens is you're really moving yourself over into this fat burning place. Yay, we love that. So low carb, if you're keeping those macros up to around 100, 150 grams, you may not get over into that fat burning place, and that might be a weight loss problem for you. The other thing about the ketogenic diet is that most people will start to increase the fat content. So they go to way over, like about 60% of the intake of their food comes from good fat. That's fine, that's great, but if you have any kind of stagnation of the liver, if your cholesterol is high, this could be a little bit of a problem, and I'll talk about this in a moment. The third thing with a ketogenic diet is I can't emphasize enough that the ketogenic diet is mild protein, because protein can spike your blood sugar as much as carbohydrates can if you do it too much. So we become more restrictive in keto than low carb, but we get more results. So the thing about ketogenic diet is you are gonna get more ketones. Low carb, you might not get ketones. But in a ketogenic diet, you're most likely gonna get ketones. Ketones kill hunger, they create better mental clarity, they're a sign that your body's burning fat. So ketones are really beautiful, and you wanna make sure that you're getting them. So the pros to the ketogenic diet is ketones for repair, ketones for mental clarity, and you're burning more fat. That's fabulous. The cons is that it's harder to stick with. We also are seeing some evidence in the ketogenic diet that people's cholesterol levels are going up, and it gets flippin' boring to do the ketogenic diet over and over and over again. So remember that low carb gives you a little more flexibility. You're just taking those refined carbohydrates out, but you might not be getting as good of a result. But with the ketogenic diet, you're gonna get a better result, but it might be a little more boring, a little harder to stick to, so be mindful of that, which is why I'm such a huge fan of cycling both of these diets. They both have benefit to you, and they're both wonderful at different times of your life. When we look at diet, we've got to get off this idea that there's one diet for you. There are a lot of different diets. So the way that I look at low carb is a great sort of maintenance go-to diet. It really is going to keep your metabolic markers in a good place. The ketogenic diet is your go-to diet when you really need to power up your brain, you really need to lose more weight. That's a good place. Now, last thing I'm going to tell you is I've married both of these concepts together in a diet called ketobiotic. I feel like we can really look at nature's carbs as healing, and we don't have to go really low into those extremely low keto diets. Ketobiotic is a beautiful marriage of both of these. And in my new book that's now out for pre-order called Fast Like a Girl, everything you need to know about the ketobiotic diet is in that book. So we'll put a link here in the notes so that you guys can pre-order that now. I'm so excited about it. 83,000 words this book is. It is a monster book. It's got so many recipes for you all. But for the sake of this video, I want you to understand the difference between both of these. Because you might be on vacation and just say, well, I'm going low carb. I'm just going to take the refined carbohydrates out. Or you might say, it's easier for me just to do low carb, but I want you to understand you might not get the weight loss result you want. Whereas the ketogenic diet, you might snap into that diet and be like, oh, this is incredible. I'm getting incredible results, but I can't sustain it. So the unification of the ketobiotic diet helps you really have more fluidity with your diet and lose weight and get that mental clarity. So it's a beautiful marriage of both. Those of you that have been following the ketobiotic diet, put your results in the comments. And again, I know this is like a nuanced video, but I really want you to understand that there isn't one diet for you to follow all the time. So both of these have benefits, both of these have negatives, and you get to decide on what day you're gonna lean into what. Variation is the key. And as always, I hope that helps. And let me know in the comments if you pre-ordered Fast Like a Girl. This is a massive pet project of mine that I've poured my heart and soul into. So grateful for Hay House for their publishing it, and you can now pre-order it. Super excited to get this out to the world.